Welcome back, everybody. We're here to talk about The Subtle Knife, and the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that Kira and I are dressed exactly the same, and indeed in the same place as we were when discussing Book One, and that is because I got so excited after reading Book One that I just rattled straight into Book Two and didn't even think about it, and managed to read both of them in the space of this month that I've given myself to read Book One. So here we are to talk about The Subtle Knife. Here it is. Now I'm going to start off actually by saying, this cover, I was thinking, what, when I saw this cover, and now it makes perfect sense.
Yes.
But we're going to come to Cittàgazze or Cittàgazze later.
Cittàgazze.
We think Cittàgazze. Where do we start with book two? Ask me a question, Kiran. I don't even know where to begin.
What did you expect the first chapter to be? And what was it?
Good question. So I've still got the same cup of tea from our book one discussion. Okay, so you finish book one, and Lyra is sort of going off into this new world. So you expect chapter one, book two is going to pick you up there. No, no, not at all. Who is this new character? What is this world that we are now in? And I suppose, I think anecdotally I'd heard that some people were a bit like, oh, I'm a bit disappointed that we've kind of gone here. Whereas I was like, oh, this is exciting, new character. And I suppose the world is very much our world. So I was like, oh, okay, we're in sort of like normal land, or Earth as some people call it. And that was sort of, that was weirdly comforting, but you're straight into this quite action-y plot, aren't you, with Will? That he's immediately under threat, which is quite scary. So that despite the fact that the world is familiar, the idea of him being in peril means that you don't get to relax at all. You're like, oh, okay, we're having a chase. And there's a change of pace, which I quite enjoyed.
Yes, it's like entering the final few chapters of a thriller.
Yeah.
Except it's the first chapter of a book where you expected to read about Lyra's foot landing the other side of the Northern Lights in this new world.
Yeah.
And what a brave, mad decision to make. And so here for it.
Yeah.
I remember thinking that. I was just, I don't know who Will is, but I care deeply about who he is, and instantly he is set up in many ways in opposition to Lyra, even though you know that they've got to somehow become parallel. But he is our traditional hero, it seems. You know, he's very protective and loving of his mum. When he kills the man accidentally, he doesn't want to have done that.
Yeah.
Whereas Lyra probably would have jumped up and down and be like, "Yay, I'm like my father. I'm like Yorick." And so he's more sort of a traditional hero with our world morals and ethics. So that there is that extra layer of sort of intrigue about, are we going to see these two worlds meet where the ethics and morals are so different?
Yes, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. I mean, I have a propensity to obviously like any character who has my name. So
obviously, it's a great name.
I like this Will. He seems like a good guy. I like the fact that again you were chucked straight into the action. No explanation. That we're back into sort of normal land, as I now call it. And then you're thinking, oh, I wonder whether we're going to go back to Lyra and how we're going to go back to Lyra. And what I particularly loved about this book was that you have these multiple worlds, I suppose, because we have Cittàgazze as well. And I loved the bravery of that and the way that it sort of linked them all together, and the sort of travelling between them was very well explained. And I just thought that's quite a brave thing to do, and it didn't feel weird, actually, at all.
No, because it sets it up like quite a straight thriller. These guys are after some letters that his mother has. And then sort of Will runs away from them, and then suddenly he follows a cat through into another world.
We've
It's
all
like,
done it.
oh, okay, yeah. That's
We've all
I
been
would
there.
follow a cat anywhere, so that would probably happen to me.
I have a thing now, so that, sometimes you read a book and it alters the way that you see the world. So, Kiran doesn't know this, but when I arrived, we're in Kiran's house right now, and when I arrived here, I parked up outside and I looked at your house and I saw your cat in the window, and I was like, it's all gone very Pullman. I was worried that I was going to see the entrance to another world, slip through it, and that this chat would never happen. But isn't that interesting how Pullman has that ability to just alter the way that you see things after reading his books? I have the same thing now with Oxford and the Spires. And
Yes. Because he situates you so perfectly that you believe it, and so when weird stuff starts to happen, you just accept it. You're like, oh well, that's an explanation. That's where missing cats go. They just go into another world.
It's perfect. I'm going to remember this excuse for if I ever lose our cat and I have to explain it to my kids. It's just gone to another world. It's fine.
Hopefully not Cittàgazze.
Yeah,
because they do not like cats.
Well,
there.
let's talk about Cittàgazze, because this is why this cover sort of makes more sense now, because it's this sort of empty sort of city, which feels very weird and alien, and there's only a few children living in it. What a weird creation. And I was saying to you just before we started the camera rolling that this reminded me of, if you've seen the film Inception, there's this bit where he and his wife sort of descend into this level where they're there they create their own architecture whilst they're down there, basically, and they build these buildings and this sort of city that's empty, and it feels very weirdly realised in that film. But when I was reading it, I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense to me visually. I could sort of really, really see it. Did you have when you were reading it for the first time, how did you visualise?
A bit like Lord of the Flies, but in a city instead of on an island. It terrified me. I've always been a goody two-shoes, and I like authority figures, and just that idea that... Do we need to...
There's the
It's
cat.
my cat.
That's so weird.
She's not happy about being shut out.
Should we open the door and let her in?
Okay.
Let's see how well that goes.
Yeah.
Hey, you.
She is not happy with us.
Oh, no. You got back out again. So we opened the door for the cat, and she's not interested.
Now that it's open, she's like...
What's your cat called?
Luna.
Luna is not into the idea of sitting here and talking about Pullman, but we'll leave the door open and she may make an appearance later. Stay tuned to find out. Where were we?
So I like authority figures, is what I was saying.
Right.
And so that lack of order instantly was terrifying to me, whereas I'm aware that some kids will come to that and think, oh great, no grown-ups, which is what Lyra and Will, to a certain extent, do.
Yeah.
Though Will, as a carer for his mother, takes on that kind of parental figure, whereas Lyra's never made herself any food because she's spoiled and has never had to cook for herself. So that worried me from the off. But I think some people coming to that would think, oh, this is great, until there is that bit where you come across the kids stoning the cat.
Yes,
and you realise that this is not, that they are terrified. That they are terrified of it.
And they very quickly built up this kind of mythology around what's going on to them, with them. So that this poor cat is considered to be a sort of
a demon.
A demon, that needs to be attacked.
A demon, not a good demon.
Yes.
A demon.
Yes.
But yeah, the spectres are obviously in the city, and they feed off adults, and just are horrifying, absolutely horrifying. And when, towards the end of the book, just jumping ahead a bit, we finally experience what it must be like to be killed by a spectre through that poor witch. I think her name's Lena. And that hopelessness that washes over you. It's very Dementor-esque.
It's very Dementor-esque,
before Dementors, obviously. But yeah, that draining of all hope and just a descent into indifference is the word that he keeps coming to, and is obviously important. Yeah,
that is a very weird thing. So it's not... I suppose similar to the Dementors, but it's not like having your soul sucked out, but that idea of just giving up.
Yes.
Which I found almost more terrifying than any other description of sort of death that I can think of, that you would simply just give up,
Cease to care or be interested in the world. And that seems to Pullman to be the most horrifying thing. That lack of engagement. It goes so dark, this book. It's very dark, which again I loved. I liked the darkness. I liked the multiple worlds. I liked the plot really ratchets up, and so it's quite actiony. It's sort of, as you say, it has these thriller-esque moments. But it doesn't let up the pace at all. No. Even in Cittàgazze, which has this sort of empty feeling to it, there's still lots of stuff happening, isn't there? Yes, and they're constantly hopping between the worlds. I love that it's not this momentous thing anymore. It sort of becomes a device to sort of get what they want. And obviously on one of their later trips they meet Mary Malone, and she is a brilliant character, this nun turned scientist, and a character that I'd sort of forgotten about before the reread, but she's so integral and becomes more and more integral. She is the serpent, and obviously we find out what that means in the third book, but she's a brilliant, but they're all brilliant characters, and we switch between all of them, and I would read a full trilogy about any one of the multiple characters that he sort of explores in this book.
I think that is a good sign, I suppose, of somebody who's put the work in, of a writer who's really sat down. There's a fully realised world. These characters are fully fleshed out, and as they say, that means that you would quite happily follow them into their world and find out more about their lives. I'm not sure that that's the case with all books, and I think that it's a testament to the work that he's clearly done before sitting down to write them, that you feel fully supported in every character, every place, every facet of the plot. The weird thing I think about the second book, that might be a difficult part of a trilogy. It's difficult second novel syndrome. Also, there's often this thing with films that with trilogies, sometimes the second film can be the best. So people will talk about things like Empire Strikes Back or The Godfather Part 2, and I kind of feel that. So I haven't gone ahead and read book 3, but with book 2, I thought it was brilliant, and I was surprised to hear that some people have been a bit disappointed by it. I thought it was totally satisfying.
They are wrong.
If you think that, you're wrong.
All opinions welcome.
Of course, and we would love again to hear your opinions in the comments. So if you're reading it for the first time like me, how did you find the journey into this second book? And if you're rereading it, again, are you discovering new layers? Or I think with the second book, it seems like it would be slightly different rereading experience to the first book, because it's not about sort of refamiliarising yourself with those characters again, because it's the same sort of characters and some new ones. But yeah, what was it like for you, sort of rereading?
I'd forgotten so many threads, and the subtle knife comes in so late, which I thought that they'd had that earlier. I'd basically forgotten about Lord Boreal and that creepy seduction scene with Mrs. Coulter, and just the way that Mrs. Coulter just pops up in the most dramatic ways possible at the least helpful ways is just. I love that Pullman's like, things are kind of going smoothly. Here is Mrs. Coulter to ruin everything. And obviously Lee Scoresby. Do you get why I love him?
Yes.
So
no,
much?
he really comes to the fore in the second book, doesn't he? He has a lot to do and definitely sort of lands as a character.
Literally lands.
Oh yeah, all the puns right here. Mrs. Coulter, I think it's probably worth talking about her because we didn't talk about her in book 1, but she is this horrifically malevolent presence, and as you say, she just appears when you don't want her to. Is there a danger, I suppose, with a character like that they become sort of muhaha evil, or does he do enough work with that thing because of that relationship that her and Lyra have, and that sort of, you can see how it's seductive, the way that she's beautiful and that she can introduce you to a world that you've never been part of.
I do think that underpinning of love for Lyra is enough to kind of keep her grounded and not descending into muhaha villainry.
Yeah.
But she is ruthless, and I think that is a trait matched in many of my favourite characters, like Ulrich Bernsen, and just so because she's on this side of it rather than that, she's the villain. But I admire her ruthlessness and her calculation, and the way that everyone in the book is in awe of her in the true sense. Like, she is awesome and terrifying.
I thought what I really liked actually was the moment that she had together with Lord Asriel when he was saying to her, "Come with me."
At the end of the
first book, and that there was this moment where you saw this sort of little chink in her armour where she, was thinking about it, and then this defence descends and she goes, "No, I can't." And I just thought, wow, I thought it was a very powerful moment where you saw the humanity, but then you saw the sort of the ice cold control that she seems to have.
Yeah, the control. She controls herself. And actually it was that weakness that she has for Lord Asriel that blinded her to seeing that Lyra was right there. Like, literally listening and seeing her parents together. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, I think we've said enough about the subtle knife. I now genuinely do have to go away and read book 3, which is a bit bigger and a bit longer, but we will see you back here hopefully in a month's time to talk about book 3 and the conclusion of the trilogy, which is sort of, I don't know, it's exciting and terrifying at the same time. I think it's a good thing, isn't it, that you want the reading book, you think, I want to know what happens, but I also don't want it to end because I'm enjoying the world.
And you also kind of don't want it to happen because you know it's going to end badly for some people.
Well, I didn't know that. I mean, well, I suppose
it's going
it's going to
to.
have to, isn't it? It's true.
Look how he ended this book.
That's
With
true.
John, it was like
Yeah.
Lee Scoresby, then John Parry, like boom, boom.
Yeah.
Gone.
There is death. There's definitely death. There will be blood, as they say. Okay, so we'll see you in about a month's time to talk about book 3. And as mentioned before, there are these great discussion videos with Kiran and Martha talking about the sort of themes and characters. I think the second video is characters, which is really good to hear. You'll hear more about Lee Scoresby and more fangirling. I think somebody likes Lee Scoresby. That's what I'm going to say.
He's the best.
He's the best. But thank you for watching, and we'll see you in a month's time. Take care.